Did Buckingham Palace or Prince William carefully set a high-stakes trap for Prince Harry and Meghan Markle? And were they naive enough to walk straight into it? It's a question that's lingered quietly in elite circles for years, but now the answer feels harder than ever to dismiss. We were told they stepped away for privacy. We were told it was about shielding their children from the relentless glare of royal life. But look at the reality today. Since that dramatic departure, there have been more interviews, more documentaries, and more tell-all books than any working royal has produced in generations. It's almost ironic. A privacy seems to mean something entirely different in the Sussex playbook. To many observers, this doesn't look like a retreat at all. It looks more like a calculated effort to monetize every secret and grievance tied to the crown. But the monarchy has survived for over 1,000 years for a reason. It doesn't think in short-term moves. While Meghan was reportedly entering the royal family with the confidence to reshape centuries of tradition into something fit for a Netflix storyline, the institution itself was quietly consulting its rulebook. Because royal status isn't something you win through PR strategies or a successful podcast, it's built on bloodlines and precedent, and as time passes, it's becoming increasingly clear the palace didn't bend for them. If anything, it may have allowed them to step right out of the royal narrative on their own. Harry, once the adored, mischievous prince, now appears more like a supporting character in a story he no longer controls. He traded royal duty for a California lifestyle, and the consequences of that decision are beginning to look significant, especially for his children, Archie and Lilibet. To understand what's really happening, you have to look at the invisible barrier the palace has constructed around the monarchy. Back in 1917, King George V introduced the letters patent. This wasn't just a routine legal document. It was a solid framework designed to protect the monarchy from exactly the kind of disruption we're seeing today: chaos and opportunism. The rules are strict. Being a prince or princess isn't just about who your parents are. It requires legitimate royal lineage, proper registration under the crown's authority, and recognition by the Church of England. There are no celebrity shortcuts here. The monarchy doesn't operate on popularity or social media influence. Those old formal documents carry all the weight. And for Archie and Lilibet, those same documents are starting to resemble a closed gate. King George V had already envisioned a streamlined monarchy long before it became a modern talking point. After witnessing the collapse of empires in Russia and Germany, he understood that too many royals created too many vulnerabilities. By limiting the titles of prince and princess to the sovereign's children and grandchildren through the male line, he built a natural system of restriction. Harry and Meghan seem to overlook this historical reality, perhaps believing their global influence would push the palace to make an exception. But the monarchy doesn't adjust its rules for fame. Making an exception for one couple could open the door for countless others to demand the same recognition. While the Sussexes shaped their narrative from Montecito, the palace remained silent. But that silence may have signaled something much more strategic: a trap quietly closing. The first hint of trouble appeared with Archie's birth in 2019. What should have been a picture-perfect royal moment quickly turned into something far more unusual. When the birth certificate was released, people noticed a peculiar detail. Meghan's legal name, Rachel Meghan, had been entirely removed. In its place was the formal designation, Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Sussex. There was no clear explanation and no precedent. Even figures like Princess Diana and Catherine, Princess of Wales, retained their legal names on official records. So why was this different? Was it Meghan distancing herself from her past identity? Or was the palace making a subtle statement? Some insiders suggest it was a clerical adjustment directed by the palace itself, an indication that Archie's position within the royal framework was already under scrutiny before he could even take his first steps. It hinted that the documentation didn't fully align with tradition. And within the monarchy, anything that deviates from precedent raises serious concerns. this wasn't just a minor change, it effectively removed the personal identity from the record. By replacing a legal name with a title, the document shifted from recording an individual birth to recording a title giving birth. From a legal standpoint, that distinction matters. It creates a layer of separation that could be used later. If royal titles were ever stripped entirely, the birth certificates themselves could represent an identity that no longer formally exists. But that's only part of the story. Behind palace walls, the atmosphere during Archie's arrival was reportedly tense, even fraught with legal complications. The couple's decision to reject established royal medical protocols sent shockwaves through the institution. For centuries, royal births have been overseen or verified by trusted officials, traditionally even witnessed by the Home Secretary, to confirm the legitimacy of succession. Harry and Meghan broke with tradition, choosing a private birth that left plenty of unanswered questions in its wake. That decision ignited a wave of intense speculation across the globe. Without the usual easel announcement presented in the traditional way or the expected medical confirmations, doubts quickly began to surface. Some questioned whether a surrogate had been involved, while others pointed to the absence of official signatures from the standard authorities. What stood out even more was the palace's response, or lack of one. They made no effort to shut down the rumors. By staying silent, they allowed uncertainty to grow. It was a subtle but calculated move. They didn't need to challenge anything directly. They simply chose not to validate it through the established process. As a result, Archie seemed to exist in a strange kind of royal limbo, technically in the line of succession, yet disconnected from the formal mechanisms that confirm it. If Archie's birth raised eyebrows, Lilibet's arrival in 2021 turned that quiet skepticism into something far louder. She was born in California, far removed from the long-standing traditions associated with St. Mary's Hospital in London. There was no easel placed outside Buckingham Palace, no immediate official notice, and for hours, no acknowledgement from the Queen's office. Instead, the announcement came through a PR statement. For a royal birth, that silence was striking. The palace didn't overlook it by accident. Recognition, in royal terms, carries weight. By withholding it, they seemed to send a message. While Lilibet may be Harry's daughter, she wasn't being treated as a royal heir in the traditional sense. Instead, she appeared to be positioned more like any other celebrity child in California, far removed from the monarchy itself. Then came the controversy surrounding her name. Lilibet was the Queen's deeply personal childhood nickname, rarely used outside her closest circle. Within palace circles, its use was viewed by some as a surprising overstep. Reports suggested the Queen was particularly displeased, as it was believed the couple had implied they had her blessing, when in reality they had only informed her of their choice. Rather than strengthening ties to the Queen's legacy, the decision seemed to have the opposite effect, creating distance from those who ultimately hold the authority to grant titles and recognition. The situation didn't end there. The baptism added another layer of complexity. In royal tradition, a christening is more than a religious ceremony. It formally connects the child to both the Church of England and the monarchy. But in Lilibet's case, that connection wasn't officially established. A private ceremony was held in California, but it wasn't recorded by the Church of England. Because it didn't follow the recognized procedures, it's viewed within royal structures as incomplete. And in that context, incomplete can carry serious implications. Yes. This left both children in an unusual position. While clearly part of their parents' lives, their presence within official royal history appears uncertain. And for an institution that relies heavily on continuity and record, being absent from that framework is significant. It's important to remember that the British monarch also serves as the supreme governor of the Church of England. A royal baptism isn't just symbolic, it carries institutional importance. By opting for a ceremony led by an Episcopal bishop in California, surrounded by a celebrity guest list, the event took on a distinctly non-royal character, with no formal standing in the UK's religious structure. At that point, the door seemed to close. Without that formal inclusion, any connection to the crown becomes more theoretical than practical. Then conflict shifted from religious tradition to legal battles. Harry's ongoing fight over security, particularly his disputes with the committee responsible for assigning police protection, has become a critical factor affecting his children's future. He argued that his family faced serious threats and deserved the same level of protection as senior royals. But both the palace and the UK government remained firm. Their position was clear: without being a working royal, taxpayer-funded security doesn't apply. This creates a significant challenge. Without official protection, functioning as a royal becomes nearly impossible. It limits participation in major events, access to royal residences, and the ability to represent the monarch. In effect, the outcome of this legal struggle has weakened the practical reality of the children's royal status. They may hold titles, but their day-to-day lives remain far removed from the structure that typically supports them. And this situation isn't likely to ease in the future. If Harry's relationship with King Charles has already been strained, the outlook under Prince William could be even more decisive. Reports suggest that when William eventually becomes king, he may take a far firmer stance, and he has little interest in revisiting these issues. Sources claim that William's frustration with Harry and Meghan has reached a tipping point, and once he becomes king, he may move to formally remove the Sussex children's titles. In his view, isn't just a ceremonial label, it represents duty and commitment to the crown. If the parents have stepped away from that responsibility and publicly exposed the family, then why should the next generation retain that distinction? According to insiders, William sees the continued use of those titles as a form of branding, leveraging prestige from an institution they've spent years criticizing. The sentiment within palace circles suggests he wants to completely sever the Sussex link in order to safeguard the future of his own children, George, Charlotte, and Louis. From his perspective, the Montecito branch poses a risk to the monarchy's stability, and he may be willing to take decisive action to remove them from the official framework. This goes far beyond a personal disagreement. It reflects a broader strategy centered on preservation. While the Sussexes have attempted to build a powerful brand in the United States, that foundation appears increasingly unstable. From critical remarks like the Air Grifter's comment attributed to a senior Spotify figure to the declining interest in their streaming projects, public enthusiasm seems to be fading. Their latest venture, American Riviera Orchard, comes across to some as less of a royal enterprise and more like an attempt to stay relevant in a crowded influencer market. Without the backing and mystique of the palace, their influence shifts. Meghan's lifestyle projects and Harry's publications carry less weight when they are viewed as outsiders rather than insiders. Further they move from royal tradition, the more they risk diminishing their own significance. At its core, the royal narrative only holds its power when the monarchy remains at the center. Once that connection is broken, the dynamic changes completely. For Archie and Lilibet, the reality is far more complicated. They are growing up surrounded by privilege and visibility. At the same time, they risk being distanced from the very history they were born into. They may not retain the same HRH status, may lack state protection, and could find themselves largely absent from official royal life. Their parents challenged tradition, shaped their own narrative, and sought recognition on their own terms. But the institution has demonstrated that heritage isn't flexible. It's governed by established rules. In many ways, the palace didn't need to take direct action. By simply allowing events to unfold, it let Harry and Meghan's own decisions shape the outcome. No confrontation was necessary, just patience. It's an unfortunate situation for the children. They didn't choose this conflict, yet they are the ones who will live with its consequences. While their parents focus on building a life and brand abroad, the monarchy has quietly moved forward without them. As time passes, a larger question emerges. Did they truly gain freedom, or did they lose something far more lasting? The enduring reality is that the crown operates on a different timeline. It plans for generations, while public figures often operate within the rhythm of news cycles. The palace's approach has been one of quiet exclusion, No direct attacks, no dramatic responses, just strict adherence to long-standing rules. By doing so, it positioned the Sussexes as the ones out of alignment. And so Archie and Lilibet's story doesn't unfold as a traditional royal fairy tale. Instead, it becomes one defined by distance, formalities left incomplete, connections left unrecognized, and a gradual absence from the official narrative. What the palace has done here extends beyond legal or procedural decisions. It sends a message about how the monarchy protects itself, one that will resonate far beyond California and media headlines. The children may grow up with comfort and opportunity, but they may also carry the distinction of being heirs in name, yet not in function. Their presence may remain visible in the media, but not within the lineage that defines the Windsor legacy. At its core, the institution prioritizes its own continuity above all else. It appears the Sussexes may have underestimated that reality. They may have believed public opinion could pressure the monarchy to adapt, but historically, public loyalty has leaned toward the institution rather than individuals. When Harry shared personal details in his memoir, it may have had unintended consequences. Each revelation arguably widened the distance between his family and the monarchy. The legal disputes and structural decisions that followed simply formalized that divide. Within royal tradition, loyalty to the bloodline holds immense weight, and breaking from it carries lasting consequences. Looking ahead, the path for the Sussex family seems increasingly separate, with King Charles facing ongoing challenges and William preparing for a more assertive role. Opportunities for reconciliation appear to be narrowing. Archie and Lilibet may grow up as high-profile figures in America, recognized, discussed, and influential in their own way, but their connection to the monarchy in its traditional and historical sense may remain limited. The underlying reality is that the palace has effectively cut off the Sussex branch of the family tree without ever needing to say a single word. They let the rules speak for themselves, and those rules delivered a clear answer. To dig deeper into this story and reach that full narrative weight, you have to look at the unseen figures behind the scenes, the individuals Harry once referred to as other men in gray suits. These are the courtiers and senior officials who may not carry flashy titles, but they quietly safeguard the monarchy's long-term survival. While the public was fixated on the headline moments, the Oprah interview, the revelations in Harry's memoir, these figures were thinking several moves ahead. They understood that allowing Harry and Meghan to remain half in and half out could create something dangerous. A parallel royal court in California, a polished, media-friendly version of the monarchy that might one day compete with or even overshadow the real institution. So their approach was deliberate. Instead of confrontation, they focused on quietly severing every formal tie to the UK. Not with dramatic announcements, but through procedural decisions and administrative steps. One of the clearest examples of this was the eviction from Frogmore Cottage. This wasn't just about property or a dispute over housing. It symbolized something far bigger. It marked the final break in Archie and Lilibet's tangible connection to Britain. Without an official residence in the UK, the children effectively lost their status as residents tied to the realm. From the palace's perspective, participation in royal life requires a physical presence. Without a home on British soil, any future claims to roles, responsibilities, or even security can be dismissed by pointing to their permanent base in California. In that sense, the move made it practically impossible for the children to function as royals in anything beyond title alone. There's also a deeper, more personal consequence, one that affects identity itself. Harry has spoken openly about the challenges of growing up as of the spare. Yet, by relocating and stepping away from royal structures, he may have placed his own children in an even more complex position. They aren't simply spares, they exist outside the system entirely. They'll grow up being told they hold royal titles, yet they won't experience the responsibilities, traditions, or protections that usually come with them. It creates a unique contradiction, raised with royal identity in a country that doesn't formally recognize it, while the country that granted those titles keeps them at a distance. There's a certain irony in that. In trying to shield them from the pressures of royal life, he may have unintentionally distanced them from a clear sense of belonging within that legacy. At its core, the palace's approach relies on one advantage it has in abundance: time. The monarchy doesn't react to short-term headlines or viral moments. It plans decades ahead. As Archie and Lilibet grow older, the significance of their royal ties may gradually fade from public focus. Over time, they may be seen less as members of a royal branch and more simply as the king's grandchildren living abroad. By avoiding a public confrontation, the palace has leaned into one of its most effective strategies: quiet distance and gradual disengagement. No dramatic fallout, just a slow shift in relevance. Each time Harry and Meghan publicly revisit their grievances, it can reinforce the perception that their relationship with the institution is strained. And in doing so, it can unintentionally strengthen the case for keeping that distance in place. Ultimately, the heaviest impact of this situation may not fall on Harry or Meghan themselves, but on their children who are navigating a story shaped long before they could understand it. The unfolding situation serves as a reminder that within institutions built on legacy and continuity, presence matters. So the real question becomes, when Archie and Lilibet are old enough to reflect on all of this, how will they choose to tell their own story?